Hi, I'm Thea Quiray Tagle, and I'm the curator for Afterlife, now on view at YBCA, in person and online. As part of the digital programming for the exhibition, I'm hosting a series of conversations with artists from the exhibition about their strategies of future thinking and survival. Today, I've invited two artists from Afterlife, Alejandro Acierto and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, to answer a few questions about their work. Alejandro is a Filipinx, Latinx artist, musician, and curator, currently based in Nashville, Tennessee. And Zulfikar is a Pakistani-Lebanese artist and curator based in San Francisco. I'm really excited to talk to the two of them today about their projects featured in Afterlife, which I think powerfully and poetically capture the past, present, and future of queer and trans people of color in the US, as well as globally. Zulfikar's installation from his larger project, Tomorrow We Inherit the Earth, and Alejandro's installation, How to Take Up Space When You've Only Been Given the Margin, are, again, viewable in person and online at YBCA. Hi, you two.
Hi.
Hi. I think that both of the installations in the show press viewers to consider different ways that QTPOC activism or revolution, what it can look like, what it can feel like or sound like. And I was wondering if you two could talk a little bit about the political movements or political imaginaries that informed and inspired the projects.
A lot of what's informing this work specifically is the history and visual culture also, but really the movement that was initiated by ACT UP, who for so long and still continues to do work around essentially protecting queer trans people's lives, right? Especially now thinking about, this moment on this particular day, this Trans Day of Remembrance, where 34 trans people have been killed in 2020 alone, right? And we still have another month and some change left of the year. Hopefully nothing else happens, right? But, I think that there's a lot of weight that I'm sort of carrying in this work that relies on the mere survival of queer and trans people, right? And for me, or to sort of bring ACT UP back into this conversation as a central focus of what has sort of unfolded into this this queer movement, right? These queer rights as human rights sort of movement is another way to sort of remind us of the work that's been done, but also the work that continues and needs to continue to be done in the future. I draw on, Sylvia Rivera's work specifically, right? And her and Marsha P. Johnson, right, who initiated Stonewall, but also who were both, these incredible women that were always on the streets fighting for other women like them, right, and other queer people to not only have the right for survival, right, but also to be seen, right, and again, right, being seen is also being part of this this moment of survival, this way of surviving. So in a lot of ways, I'm calling on them. I'm calling on their work specifically, and using this sort of neon light as a way to push out beyond the sort of immediate confines of two-dimensional space, and really pushing into sort of the fourth, fifth, future directions, right? Other places that we wouldn't have been able to access because the light is being stopped, right? So for me, the pink neon pushes us out beyond physical space, but into still more temporal and ephemeral spaces that we didn't have access to before.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of history also within my work as well, in terms of trying to figure out what exactly is the queer imaginary, I think. And for me, that question has to be rooted in what is the Muslim imaginary also, right? So, and I do think futurity is so much about history, so much about the past, that sometimes I don't think of futurism as solely a project of thinking, okay, speculatively in 2050 or whatever, the world is going to look like this in exactly this much time. I think it's more about imagining other possibilities in other worlds, and the future becomes this blank canvas, so we can let our queer imaginary flow. And within the particular piece at YBCA, it's two spaceships, like rocket-style spaceships, NASA-style, looking, old looking 1960s spaceships that instead of the body is of the spaceship and the view hole is of the spaceship, but the rest of it is of these minarets. One of them is a minaret in Lahore in Pakistan called the Wazir Khan Mosque, very famous for its intricacy. And the other one is the Great Mosque of Aleppo, which was actually destroyed in 2013 during government rebel fighting, and this sort of 1,000-year-old minaret just was dust within a matter of minutes. And in that particular one, I sequin. I spent like 6 months individually sequining these green sequins, large sequins, so that the whole thing would glitter. And I think there's some resonances also when Alejandro, when you were speaking of the glow of the neon lights. And I think in this particular case, the sequin is also such a queer fabric. It's the beloved of queer performers. It's the, and for me, sequining it by hand was a matter of resurrection, but through a queer strategy. And I think that for me is really important, is how do we as queer people imagine ourselves as part of future histories that matter. First of all, how do we, for example, in South Asia and the Middle East and North Africa, we are excluded from histories of revolution that have marked our history and have given us heroes and given us martyrs and given us myths and given us stories. And we've been excluded not because of, oh, maybe there wasn't a language for it. There definitely was, but it wasn't taken seriously enough. It wasn't thought, like, if that happened to be a fact, it had to be buried. And I think for me, it's about the unburying of these people, the fact that we have been part of every social movement in history. So I create a future in which we are the rebel leaders, because we just have great ideas, queer and trans people, right? We could do this. And for me, that's a lot of what Futurity holds. It holds, I don't think it holds a possible, I don't see a solution in my history. There's still always an enemy, or there's still always an oppressor. But I definitely see different ways of being able to tackle it.
And for both of you, I really love how, even if you are, even if many of us are apprehending your work through our computer screens or behind glass because of this new presentation format, that touch and tactility, right? All of these senses are still super central to the work. And another sense I wanted to talk about is, our hearing. And I really love in both of your pieces how music and sound are so central. And I can really see how, your own multidisciplinary backgrounds, right? Alejandro, you're also a musician. Zulfikar, you're a performer. How those backgrounds in music and sound really come through in the work. And so I was wondering if you both wouldn't mind talking a bit about the soundtracks or the sounds that we're hearing in your video works or the video pieces, and how they can help us not only see, but hear the sounds of queer and trans world making.
I mean, for me, mysticism is also very central to my work. And I think mysticism is very queer because it's about a personal relationship with your creator or higher power, some people would say, but specifically Sufi mysticism, which is very much rooted in an Islamic view of the cosmos and God, and elaborates upon that and creates a personal relationship. And especially in the Pakistani context, for example, we have 2 words in Urdu for you. One is respectful, aap, and one is like casual, your friend, like only your best friend though. Like literally you will not say anything to anyone else because it would be insulting. But tu is the like super and you cannot refer to God in any other format except tu, right? Which with other human beings you wouldn't do to a respectful figure. So it's just interesting, it's that intimate of a relationship. And going to the sound, my family on my mother's side comes from a long line of Sufi mystics of the Naqshbandi order, which is a particular kind of Sufism, and they used to do whirling dervish in Tripoli in northern Lebanon. And the sound that you hear is actually sound recordings from their meditations, or what's called zikrs, where they're reciting either verses from the Quran or the names of God, and it's sort of reflected and bounced back into the cosmos, because this particular animation, as much as it is a queer envisioning of a sort of post-human world that's somewhere in space and is forced out into space, for example, there's also something that ignites what is the Muslim imaginary of the cosmos, right? Where like this, you are in God now. So it's both, and in some, I feel like a lot of queers of you don't find many queers of faith, I think. And I feel like for me the faith is central because I think it guides a very particular possibility of another world that can be embracing. And I think the sound is meant to be embracing. You're meant to sink into the melodies. And behind that, there's sounds of fighters in southern Lebanon during the Israeli occupation of the region. And you're going through the cosmos, and then you hear just slightly behind in the sound, this particular freedom fighter said, do you think the movement comes from Mars or Jupiter? The movement comes from the people and will only ever come from the people.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of sort of parallel resonances that are happening here, because I think that, with me and the sound that I'm using for this work, they're excerpts from a speech that Sylvia Rivera gave in Washington Square Park in 1973. It doesn't officially have a title, but it's referred to as "Y'all Better Quiet Down Now," right? It's this moment where she's, fed up. She's enraged. She's mad at cis white people for co-opting a movement in the benefit for their lives, right? Not being inclusive of trans women of color, or just folks of color who are queer, within the ways that they're fighting for human rights. And so for me, what and part of this sort of resonance is in this idea of a ritual, right? And so I'm thinking about, as I'm looping this sort of fragment of her speech, which recurs over and over, I'm also sort of recalling house music in a sort of very subtle way, right? And so this idea of ritual then becomes embedded into the ways we dance, perform, the ways that we behave in these like specifically carved out queer spaces, right? That take on all of these other kinds of ritualistic elements or behaviors, right? And so we become entranced, right? These like spaces where we are allowed to sort of move into other spaces that we wouldn't have access to otherwise, right? And so a lot of the way that the sound for me operates in this particular context is through that logic of, these like these underground spaces that we build for ourselves, right? That draw on these rituals of this music that is for us, right? Out of the soundtrack of people's voices that are also from our community.
I mean, I do want to shout and rebel and also want to dance when I'm near both of your works. And I think that's really the power of encountering them again, both online or in person, if folks are able to do that. Thanks, everyone.